Thank you guys for tuning in. This video is about the stress and weight of comparison. So, I remember being in spaces in my life where I compared myself to other people and still do. And so at work, oftentimes I compare myself to people who've been doing this job a lot longer than I have and say, well, I wish that I could do this the way that she does, etc. Most recently, I was scrolling my Instagram feed and comparing myself to the people who are going on all of these vacations for spring break, and the fact that I'm not. My kids and I don't have the same spring break, so we didn't get to go on a vacation or a trip. And I see all of the pictures of everyone else going on trips, and I immediately compare myself. Oh my gosh, what kind of mom am I? I can't take my kids on these trips, blah, blah, blah. And we do it so often that we don't even notice that we're doing it, comparing our bodies to other people, comparing our hair color to other people, comparing our skin to other people, and our fashion sense and our spiritual journey even, which is so individually created and crafted that it's crazy that we would even compare it. But I found that the more I scroll, the more I compare. But even if I'm not scrolling, if I'm in a place where my brain has me comparing myself to other people and my thoughts are there, I'm going to do it in every single realm of my world. I'm going to do it at work. I'm going to do it at church. I'm going to do it when I walk into any space, right? Compare myself to other people. And when you're somebody who has struggled with an eating disorder, it's really weird because the way you see yourself with body dysmorphia in the mirror is not the way that other people see you, and you're constantly comparing yourself to people who take up more or take up less physical space than you do. So like, she's skinnier, I wonder what she's doing. And then when you see people who look just like you think they're beautiful too, and you also compare yourself to them, and it's the craziest thing. Body types just like yours, hair just like yours, but somehow you want what they have. And that is so stressful. It really is so stressful. I found myself a couple of days ago planning, because I'm planning birthday parties. All my kids are born in the same week, and my daughter and I have the same birthday. So it's crazy up in here in May. And so I'm planning birthday party, and like, I'm looking at this space to rent and like what we can do. And I'm like, I have to rent chairs for people to rent this space. Like, it's going to be like $500 for a birthday party. And y'all, I remember the McDonald's birthday parties that I had when I was little, and I know them birthday parties were not costing no $500. And I had the time of my life at those birthday parties. So I started to think to myself, is this even worth it? And then I got this bright idea that I was like, you know what? I think my kid would respond much better to an 80s birthday party where we're playing games and throwing water balloons than he ever would to some birthday party where we're doing, renting the space and there's a bounce house there when I could put one in my backyard. So, anyway, the point of that is I stressed myself out looking at all of these other birthday parties that other people were having, and I never even asked him really what he wanted. And I created this weight on me and stress of comparing myself to other people, but for what? And the other layer of that is when we compare ourselves to other people, we forget that we have a unique purpose and path in this world. And you might have everything that they have, the husband that they have, the life that they have, and it will still feel dissatisfying to you because it ain't yours. And I remember having this conversation one time about my sister's husband, right? And I love him for her. I love him as a person. But like, there are things that I look at him and I'm like, oh, I love, him for her because I know who she is. But if I met someone who was just like him, I know that we would have our own stresses and struggles inside of the relationship. I love him for her. I love that their marriage has lasted for 20 years. I think it's a beautiful thing. But I'm not her. So if I tried to go out here and find somebody who's just like Rob in effort to try to have a marriage that's just like Casey's, I'm going to fail and I'm not going to be satisfied inside of that space because the husband that God made for me is mine. And he matches me and he's crafted for me. And that same thing is true when we're out here comparing ourselves to other people's lives. The other thing is that we want their end result without ever having to go through the trials and tribulations that taught them what they needed to know to get there. The pastor said in church today, which was funny because it made me think of this. He said, if you want to submit your life to God, you can't cherry pick what you want from him. You can't say, I want the grace, but I don't want the obedience, right? And we do the same thing when we're thinking about people's lives. I want the end result, but I don't want that struggle that you went through. Like there's a speaker that I know, she is one of my favorites. She wrote the book that I shared with you guys, um, Jessica Jensen, and she is amazing. And when she speaks to people, she says this and it like baffles them, but she says her son passing away was the best thing that ever happened to her. And it's because she was able to start a foundation and she was able to help other parents. And no, yes, she would love to have her son back, but if he was meant to be taken to heaven as a baby, then his death has caused the catalyst for so many things in her life. Now, some people might look at her and be like, oh, I want to be a speaker like she is. I want to be on all the stages that she's on. But do they want their child to have to pass in order for them to get the platform that she has? No. And so if you're one of those people who's stressing and giving yourself the weight that comes with comparison, I would say this to you. I understand that we want what they have. I get it. It's a struggle. It's hard when there's so many people in front of us, especially with the advent of social media. You're going to strive to get that thing, right? You're not going to ever really go internally to align with what is really for you. You're going to strive to get that thing. You're going to follow all the master classes and plans that they tell you will get you that thing. And then you're going to get it, and it's still going to be out of an alignment, and it's going to feel so hard for you to make it happen because it's not yours. You know, a feeling isn't a calling. You might feel like you want to do something. When you're called to do it, you don't have a choice. Your gift matches it and everything aligns for that thing to be yours. When you get it, it's not going to feel satisfying. And then guess what? You might get the husband, you might get the life, you might get the speaking gig, you might get the company, you might get all of the things. And when you get there, because you haven't dealt with the root of why that's happening, you're going to start to compare yourself to someone else. Now that I have this thing, I wish I had this thing. And I wish I had this thing, and I want to have what she has. And then you're going to start the loop all over again. And I would just encourage all of us to stop doing that, right? Like your hair is your hair, your face is your face, your life is your life, your kids are your kids. And every single one of those things is part of your unique purpose and journey. And you have to be thankful for it and sit with yourself long enough to align with what's for you as opposed to trying to have what someone else has, because that was purpose for them, but it doesn't guarantee that it's yours. And I promise you that when we walk into this world and we try to do things that aren't ours, I mean, I even say this to my teachers all the time. I'm going to give you some instructional strategies, but I want you to do this. If you try this instructional strategy and it doesn't feel in alignment with your teaching style, I want you to scratch it immediately. Because if it's uncomfortable for you, it's not going to work for your kids either, because they're going to know that you're forcing it. And that's the same thing for me when I do presentations. It's the same thing for me when I facilitate trainings. All of it comes back to, if this doesn't feel comfortable and right for me, and I know it's not all about me, but when you're planning it and you use a protocol that doesn't feel right for you, your audience is going to know it. And it's the same thing for life. Stop planning and trying to strive for this life when you've never even asked yourself or God what it is that you're supposed to be aligning yourself with. Because your gifts are your gifts for a reason, and they are purposed there for you to navigate the plan that He has for you. And you have to figure out what that is and stop trying to take someone else's blueprint and make it your own. And this is a message that's just as much for me as it is for everyone who's listening. So I just encourage you today to really think about that. How are you aligning yourself with yourself? How are you aligning yourself with what God says about you and who God says you are? And stop scrolling and comparing yourself to everyone else, because guess what? There are just as many people who are scrolling and comparing themselves to you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again next week.